Hello and welcome to the Hill Gardens. I want to start off by apologizing for not having a video posted this past week on what we planted last Saturday. We planted our lavender. I was really under the weather. I did the video. When I went to edit it, I was hacking and coughing through it and the sniffles, and I had a touch of bronchitis and just was not at my best. So I decided not to post it. The video has since been deleted. So I want to just bring you up to date as to what I did last weekend. I checked in on all of our onions and our leeks. Those are growing really well, as you can see back here. Our peppers are getting huge. Our leeks have come up. Our eggplant finally popped up, I think on Monday. All 6 of them, they take a while to get to germinate. We planted those when we planted our leeks, and they came in about a week after our leeks did. We planted the lavender, which we had stratified in bags like this. There's just a few seeds in on a paper towel. That's wet. We lay it in the fridge in the crisper drawer, which is about 34-35 degrees. For lavender, we did 3 weeks. For the mint, rosemary, and chives, we did 4 weeks, roughly. So that when we plant, they pop up, and I'll show you the lavender in a minute. Normally lavender has an 18-day germination rate. Ours started popping up after 6. So the fact that they are up already is quite amazing. I actually talked to a woman who runs the garden center down the street, and she's never seen them pop up that fast, but she's also never stratified her seeds. So there is a reason to stratify, and like I said, it came up in 6 days. If we'd done it without it, would have been 18, and there's a chance that they would have rotted in that time. I mean, you don't have to stratify, but if you, the analogy I give people is, would you rather walk 20 miles or would you rather drive? Not stratifying would be walking. It's a long time. You might not get there. Driving is safer. Stratifying is safer. So that's why we stratify our seeds. I will post a link down in the description below this video to the place that we learned how to stratify. He's so much better at explaining it than we are. Our celery that we planted 4 weeks ago finally started popping up. We have, it looks like 2 of them out of the 12. They took about 4 weeks to germinate. I did not know it was going to take that long. When I asked people if they had ever grown celery, they said they grew it once, and they realized it was just easier to buy it at the store. It is easier to buy it at the store. However, there's a reason that they tell you to plant 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost date, and that's because 4 of those may be spent germinating. I got impatient when I planted ours, and they didn't come up at 3 weeks, so I replanted in these. So if all 12 of these come up and these 8 pouches come up, then we're going to be having 20 heads of celery. So I will be planting some at my parents', I will be putting some in our garden, and I will also be putting some in the Giving Garden for the local food pantry. I hate to plant stuff and then just not use it. I see it as not only a waste of seed, but a waste of food. So last week we also replanted our alpacas that never germinated, that we planted 4 weeks ago. I gave them 3 weeks, they didn't come up. I emptied the pot, I put new seed starting mix in, I put a new batch of seeds in, and if you can see, we have germination. They're growing really slow. They germinated probably 2-3 days ago, and I've already put seed starting mix up around the stem. If you remember, as tomatoes grow, they produce roots along their stem. like these. If you can see here, there's little, kind of hard to see on this one, there's little fibers along the stem. We add seed starting mix around it, or potting soil, whatever you're using, around it as it grows. Eventually it'll be up to here. And we end up developing really, really strong tomato plants before they go out in the garden. When they do go out in the garden, they're going to go all the way down to the bottom. Our beds are 10.5 inches deep. We have we put 4 inches of straw in the bottom of our bed when we built our beds this year. And that was so it would rot over the winter, and when it rots, it loses that sheen that goes on the straw. And when it loses that sheen, it will absorb water. So this summer when we water, we won't have to water every day because the straw will hold onto the water, and it covers the whole bed, so water will seep up through capillary action as needed. But let me show you a couple of our tomato plants. This here is our brandywine. You can see how stocky that is. This has been filled up just about as far as it can go. I may put some more seed starting mix in here and mound it up on this, but really strong, sturdy plant. About as big as you get at the garden center. We grew them ourselves. You can see those little fibers on this stem a little better because it's bigger. We do have some of our tomatoes that have started putting in what they call suckers that come out in between the stems here, and they put out a whole new stem and they'll grow a whole new plant, and that's why tomato plants get bushy. We are trimming those off on all of our tomatoes except the Roma tomatoes. And the reason we're not doing it on the Roma tomatoes are a determinate variety, which means they bush out, they grow about 4 feet tall, they produce all their tomatoes, they all ripen at the same time. When picked, the plant dies. So, everything else is indeterminate, which grows differently. When you do them like this and you single stem them, they can get 8-10 feet tall. We keep one stem, the main stem. All side suckers we take off. And by doing that, you can get bigger tomatoes. They will, because they only have one stem to provide energy for, they will ripen faster, they will get larger, and they'll constantly produce fruit. When one gets big enough and ripe enough to pluck, you take it off, another one will grow for you. So we're going to have tomatoes all season. These are probably going to be out in the garden about the 3rd week of May if our frost date goes the way that they're predicting. And actually they're kind of predicting it a little sooner than May 12th now. They're looking like the 1st week of May. So if we can get these in the garden by the middle of May, 60 days to maturity, so we can pick. We're going to start having tomatoes just after July 4th. So, again, single stemming, lots of height, lots of tomatoes, and ripen a little bit faster than what they say on the packet sometimes. Bush varieties, I would keep your determinants such as your Romas, which we are growing at bush variety. Let the side suckers come. Don't pluck any off. Let it get as big and bushy as it can. You will need a tomato cage for it. And we'll show you how to make our own tomato cage using galvanized wire, which we use for our finch, which we'll show you once we can actually get outdoors in some warm weather, hopefully in another 2 to 3 weeks. So that's our Brandywine Pinks, really good hearty tomato. And let me grab this one. Okay, this is our Arkansas Traveler. This is a medium-sized tomato, 6 to 8 ounces. This is the one that we've actually taken and just plucked off the side suckers right in here. And we'll clean those up a little better. You can either use your fingers when they're this small or a pair of snips. The only thing I don't like about snips is I worry about cutting off these stems, even though eventually these will be cut off. When they go in the ground, I cut off not only what's going to go in the ground, because you don't want it to rot on the plant. So you cut those off, throw them in your compost, and then as it gets taller, when it's about 2 feet above what it's planted, cut off the bottom 9 to 12 inches above the soil, and you will reduce fungus blight, because you'll have better air circulation. That's another reason to single stem, is without the bushiness of the tomatoes, you cut down on the amount of rot or blight or squeezed tomatoes, stuff like that. You'll have better air circulation. You'll have more room for stuff to grow. So that's another reason to single stem. And I don't know if you can see right here in the bottom of this pot, we actually have roots coming through. We started with 1 inch of seed starting mix, which was about half a cup. These are 3.5 inches tall. We have, from where it was planted up to here, about 9 to 10 inches. So we have some really, really hardy tomato plants started. Some of them are a little slower growing, and they are catching up, but it's taking some time. So by the time they go out in the garden, everything's going to be really hardy. Now, if you look on tomatoes, they say anywhere from 4 to 6 to 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date, which means we should have actually planted most of these either this week or up to 4 weeks from now. We showed you our light stand before. We have the room to grow them. Most of my friends, when they get plants this size, this is actually like 7 or 8 weeks of growth for them. We have this in 4. So we're a couple weeks ahead where we should be. And we have the room to get the height. Our lights are still only about 2 inches above our tomato plants. So if you've got the room and you have a light stand like this, or a table with lights that come down, that hang, that are on a chain, and you have room, start them early. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not doing anything wrong. So, you know, to each their own. If you're not killing off your tomatoes and they're growing hardy, then go for it. And also, we don't have any flowers showing yet, but there's a possibility that before these go out in the garden, the flowers will come out. If they do, clip them off. You want them to worry about getting foliage and producing height, not producing tomatoes yet. So, if your tomatoes get flowers, snip them off. You're not going to kill your plant. You're actually going to help it, because that energy will not be then put into growing tomatoes. It will be put into producing foliage, getting height, getting healthier, and getting stockier stems. So, okay. Let me pull you in. I'm going to raise this light so you can see our lavender. Okay, here we go. Here's our lavender. There's not many that came up, but we did have germination after 6 days. We have one here, one here, one here, one here. I thought we had another one somewheres. Oh, back here. It's still really tiny, but it's popped up. So, there's our lavender after 6 days. We planted 18 of the true lavender and 18 of the Vera lavender. Not very much to look at right now, but again, stratification got us 6 days. Now let's move over just a little bit and look at our eggplant. Okay, here we go. Here's our eggplant here. You can see they've all popped up. We've clipped some of the extra ones out. Remember when we planted these, we just sprinkled in. Some of them we had, I think this one we had 4 in, we had 3 in here. But those are coming up. Our leeks are coming in nicely. They're not growing as fast as our onions did, but you know, they germinated in 5 days, which is better than our onions did, and they do have some growth on them. So they are getting there. These will be ready to go in another 8 weeks. So everything's looking good there. We are raising the lights up as needed. We're keeping the ones for the eggplants fairly close down so they don't get leggy. We want to keep those nice stalks and let them get a little healthier. So let's go up and look at the onions. And here are our onions. These are the Brunswick onions with Kelsey on the other side. They are getting some pretty meaty stalks on them. We have several coming up in each spot. Some of them still need to reach full height, but they're doing fairly well through here. Our celery, which I'll tip you down just a little bit so you can see. You may be able to see it, but these little two things right here, that's 4 weeks after planting our celery. So these are just really popping up. We have another one that's popping up here. We have another one that's popping up here. So they are really slow to grow. So if you do plant celery, be patient. I really thought that these were going to be at this height at the same time. Once they get going, they will really get going, but that's going to be almost the time that we put them out in the ground. So they're not getting fertilized right now. They're not getting fed anything, just water. We're probably going to fertilize this week. So, but celery, if you plant it, be patient. These are the peppers we planted 4 weeks ago. We have this one clear back here. I think this is our one of our Escamilla Carmens, growing really well. Most of our peppers have germinated except for 6 of them. Those 6 may be getting replanted, or I may just forget about those. There are 3 there that I really want to see grow, and that's our purple Marconis, our chocolate peppers, and our poblanos. So we do have a slight aphid problem, as you can probably see in here. I have been spraying them with this solution here, which is 10 drops of peppermint oil and 10 drops of rosemary oil, and just spraying on the peppers and everything. Give them a good hearty dose once or twice a day. The water takes the aphids off, and they don't like the smell of the peppermint or rosemary. If this doesn't work, we're actually just going to take a bucket of water with a little bit of dish soap in it, some rubber gloves, pull the aphids off, put them in the water, and that may take about 3 or 4 days, but we'll eventually get rid of all the aphids. So this is why you should use boiling water in your seed starting mix, which I have not done. I should have. There's a possibility there were aphid eggs in one of the bags. We planted seeds, the eggs hatched, and now we have aphids. If this was out in the garden, it'd be no big deal because ladybugs would take care of it. And actually this year we're buying 1,500 ladybugs from Amazon if we get an aphid problem. And we will show you the video of us releasing them into the garden to take care of our aphids. Alright, so let's get on to planting. Okay, here we are all set up to plant. Today we're going to be planting our Italian basil, our lime basil, the Genovese basil, the opal basil, which is a purple basil, and our rosemary, chives, and mint. Now the rosemary, chives, and mint are all perennials. Okay, so these 3 were stratified off like this. Here's our mint right here. Okay, and I mentioned these when we started. You don't need to watch me plant all 5 cells of each of these and then the 6 of mint. I'm going to show you 1 of each and we'll move on from there. The first one I'm going to start with is the mint. Again, it is a perennial, so it will come back every year. You do have to get the starting mix out of the way. You do have to watch when it grows because it is a rather rapid grower and it can overtake your garden. Most things for herbs will overtake your garden if you don't watch it. So we tried to keep a close eye on things and trim them back once, maybe twice a week. If they're growing really fast, if we have a fast growing season. And we'll either freeze them, or we'll dry them, or we'll use them to make teas. We'll, process them in some way, or just put them in the fridge and use them as we need to. Last year we harvested all of the basil, thyme, and oregano and parsley that we had at the end of the year, and we filled 3-gallon Ziploc bags, and we filled a half-gallon, a quart bag, and we dried all of that and processed it, and we filled a 16-ounce jar. That doesn't sound like much, but it was we figured it out, and if we had bought those little tiny jars that you can get at any of the big box stores or your local supermarket, we would have had over $100 of each. So definitely worth planting your own, just a few seeds. I'm actually, for our mint, going to use the cut and plant method in here. I don't know if I can actually get these off of the towel. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just take a little piece of it, and what you can do with it on the paper towel is just take a small piece, maybe a layer or two thick, and just plant it in. And there you go. And then you cover it all over with a low pinch of soil. And then you do that in all 6 cells, and you've got your mint planted. If you plant quite a bit of this in one cell, you can always take and divide the cells later and do multiple plantings in the garden. So these 6 of mint we're going to have, we could actually split these in 2 and plant 12 if we wanted to. I'm more for letting them bunch. So that's what we're going to do with ours. We're just going to put the chunks of paper towel in here, fill up the cell. And they'll germinate on top of the paper towel. The paper towel will break down, and they'll grow up through the soil. They're not planted very deep, so you're all set there. And I know I said I was just going to plant one and show you, but I got the 6th one here, so might as well. And we'll just put a little more in here. There. And cover over with soil. And these are perennials, so we will get these back the following year because they'll have their time in the garden over winter. We'll cut the plants down just to stems, probably about, I don't know, yay tall at the end of the season before the frost hits. And we'll take and then we'll cover over with leaf mulch, and we'll show you how to do that using leaves as a ground cover. So there we go. There's all of our mint is planted. And what's the first basil we have there? That's our Italian. So let me grab the Italian large leaf basil. Basil is an annual, so you will have to plant this every year. But the nice thing about most of these herbs, especially basil, is you can cut the stems off, put them in a glass of water, wait a week changing out the water every couple days, and you will plant the basil will grow roots, and you can propagate it into soil or keep it in a jar of water, keep changing the soil out, or the water out, sorry, and you can give basil plants away, you can sell them, you can plant more in your garden. And basil seeds are relatively small, just probably about the same size that our onion ones were. 7 to 14 day germination rate. But these are going to be on our seed starting mat. And again, plant these like we plant our onions. Pinch and drop. Put several in. Bunch them up. And with what herbs cost at the store, definitely worth growing your own. And I love a lot of basil. As I've said before, my wife and I are both Italian. Let's plant all the basil we can. There we go. And that's our Italian basil. And we're going to do the same for our lime, which actually tastes like lime. It's got the lime aroma to it. And we'll go right down the line. And we're going to do the same thing for our rosemary and our chives. Okay, so let me just show you. While I was gone, I went and planted the rest of the Italian basil, lime basil, Genovese basil, and opal basil. And you might be asking, why so many varieties of basil? Well, every variety of every fruit, vegetable, or herb has its own flavor. So your lime basil has a slight lime taste to it, a really strong lime scent. Your opal basil, which this is the opal basil here, is a purple basil. And a lot of people call it ornamental basil, but you can eat it. It's got a really good flavor. The Genovese basil is mostly what you get at the supermarket. And the Italian large leaf basil is just that. It's got a large leaf to it. And it's completely different from all the other ones. So we like pesto. We like a lot of Italian dishes. We're planning on making probably, I would say, 24 to 36 pints of marinara this year. So we wanted as much basil as possible that we can get throughout the growing season. And like I said, the rest of it we can freeze or we can dehydrate. We can make it sauces like pesto or stuff like that. So there's a lot we can actually do with it. So I went ahead and I planted 5 of each of the basils. So that gives us 20 basil plants to start with. You can start these right in the garden. However, the downside with starting them in the garden is they won't reach their full maturity by the last frost date where we are, or first frost date, sorry. So we plant them a little bit sooner. And we start them indoors, and then we'll put some in the garden. The perennials, we'll make sure to put some seeds in the garden. So next year our perennials we don't have to plant, and we'll actually have more of them because we planted some in the garden. So these are the rosemary seeds. And we love rosemary even though we don't eat beef, chicken, or fish. Or sorry, beef, chicken, or pork. You can still use it with your fish. Now these ones here I'm actually going to, because they're so large, pull off the paper towel instead of cutting the paper towel. And I'm going to put multiples in each one again. We have to stratify our tarragon today. You stratify for 4 weeks. And we're planting that in 4 weeks. So it has to be stratified today, tomorrow, at the latest. You can let it go for 6 weeks if you want to. There we go. But doing it for 4 weeks is sufficient enough. So We don't want you to think it's a hard, fast rule, though. If you only do it for 4 weeks, then that's fine. If you don't get to it, because I know people get busy schedules and you can't get to it till the following week or the week after. I wouldn't let them go past 6 weeks, though, because they could rot. They may also germinate while they're in the fridge and they're moist. These are actually probably really close to germinating. We should see these in, I would dare say, 3 days. Because they are really soft. And if we had left them in the fridge any longer, we would have been taking out seeds that had already sprouted. Okay, and we're going to plant chives the same way. I just want to give you a quick word on chives. There are 2 varieties of chives. There are these ones with the purple flowers that are a onion type, and then there are those that have white flowers that are a onion type. Or sorry, garlic type. So you really want to pay attention to what you get, because some are part of the onion family, some are part of the garlic family. So really pay close attention to that when it comes time to buy your seeds and time to plant them as to which one you got. So I'm going to go ahead and finish planting the rosemary, and I will be back. Okay, so there you go. You have an update on the everything that we've planted so far, how everything's doing. Everything's going great. I'm really excited. We have 8 weeks till our last frost date. We are in cold temperatures right now. We've got a high of, I think, 22, 23 today. A high in the 20s tomorrow, and it'll be Wednesday before it picks back up into the 30s. So we have planted all of our perennial herbs that we were ready to. We have planted 4 varieties of basil, our rosemary, chives, and mint. So those are all ready to go. We are going to be planting parsley here soon. We're going to use these little pouches to do it. The reason that we're planting the parsley separate from everything else is parsley has an 18-day germination time, like our lavender does. And it is possible that the rest of this will get too big before the parsley germinates. So we want to do that separate from everything else so we can keep it under some close lights, so it doesn't get leggy, really long, white, and doesn't grow well. It is really hard to get parsley to germinate, but once it does, it really takes off. So we'll be planting that sometime here soon, and we'll probably do that on Monday. We'll do a video to show you us planting parsley. It's just like planting our basil and everything else. 1/4 inch deep, 18-day germination time, so it's going to take a while for it to come up. So we'll give you an update when everything here sprouts. I did see something weird as I was putting soil on top of these seeds. Some of the seeds had started to turn white, and I'm not really sure why that is. I'm going to have to research that and get back to you. I'll leave it, edit the description and include that as to why the seeds were getting white. I think the perennials had been soaking for so long that they were actually getting ready to germinate. So that'll be a good thing that these will come up sooner than what I thought, hopefully. They are on the heat mat because the temperatures at night in here are still quite low. When I come in the morning at 61, 62 degrees. But on days that it's in the 30s and 40s, when I come in here at night, it's in the 70s with these lights on. So it does warm up in here a little bit. We do have to get some watering done in the next day or so. Things are starting to turn a little brown on us, but we don't want to water them too soon because we want to keep down mold and fungus. So there you go. We have this entire rack completely full already. We will be putting, the next planting we do will be in 2 weeks. That will be a lot of our cucumbers and cabbage that we'll be doing. So we'll be putting those up here under these lights. And we will show you that 2 weeks from today, we're going to be planting that. That'll be our 6 weeks from our last frost date, and hopefully some of this snow will be gone and we can take you out and give you a tour of the property as well. So if you like our videos, leave us a like, subscribe, and when you subscribe, please hit that little bell so you get notified when our videos are uploaded. I thank you for coming to the Hill Gardens, and you guys have a great day.